Well, thank you, Green Party. It's good to see everybody. I'm running for District 5 Supervisor again. Last year, I lost by 187 votes. It was one of the closest races in the city's history. And I actually wasn't sure I was going to run again, but when COVID hit, I was out on the streets, boots on the ground, delivering foods to seniors, getting the kids from the school districts free lunches, getting the Chromebooks to the kids, hygiene kits, masks. And I really, stepped up and really went in the community and started organizing because I started as a community organizer, and then I went into City Hall with Ross Mercarimi when he was a Green Party. Was a legislative aide for 10 years, worked on housing, affordable housing for 2 years, and then became supervisor. And as supervisor, I passed 31 pieces of legislation in my little over a year, unanimously on homeless, housing, environmental issues, women's reproductive rights, and I started the Office of Racial Equity. So I just felt like it was really important that I step back up because I feel at this time with COVID that we really need someone to be in there that understands what is happening, be able to understand and be boots on the ground in the community and move forward. And that's me. I was a legislative aide in 2008 when we went through the last economic crisis, and I know exactly what that is for the city and what we have to do. Okay, but but thank you so much, and I'm sure I can answer some of this stuff through your questions.
Has anyone, John Mark has a question for you.
Yes.
Sure. So I saw in your questionnaire that you said of all the supervisors on the board, Dean Preston was the one whose votes least reflect your values.
Correct.
Could you give specific examples of bad votes he's taken, or what you were most,
I'll give you two.
Most opposed to?
The first one is free muni. I mean, this is what I feel about free muni, is that we actually if we need to actually expand the discounted rates or giving free muni, we should do that, because right now we have youth, senior citizens, low income, and other people that disability that has discounted or free muni. But I just feel with transportation, anybody that can afford to have the muni raised, which when the rates was going up, should pay for it. That would be Dean Preston, that would be me, and a few others. There is no way muni is going to be able to keep the lines that they're going to and the consistency without raising the rates. I mean, it's just we're not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And the thing that I'm really worried about is if muni starts cutting, which they are, who's going to suffer the most? It's going to be the most low income and communities of color that's going to suffer from muni's cuts, because they're not going to be the ones that will be able to get the Uber, the Lyft, or the cab to get them to work or wherever they need to go. So I just feel for transportation, we should actually, people who can afford to pay should pay their fair share, and that other people should expand the discounted or free muni. I disagreed with that completely. I also disagreed with his legislation for protection that people who didn't pay rent, their back rent. The thing about that legislation, this is the thing I've noticed with Dean Preston, he doesn't think 2 or 3 steps ahead of what could happen. So the problem with that legislation is that landlords can go to small claims court and sue for their back rent, right? They will get a judgment because it's contractual. So how many tenants do you know are going to have that pot of money to pay the back rent? They're not. It's not going to happen. So they're going to owe their landlord. The landlord can garnish their wages. They can get a collection agency to go after them, which will ruin their credit, which also that's going to be impossible to rent another apartment if your credit is ruined. So this legislation was not thought out, and it is really taking renters and making them feel that they're safe, and it's taking them to the edge of a cliff. And I feel that the city should have done rental subsidies. They should have used our eviction protection organizations and our defense, eviction defense organizations to work with landlords to find out how much that they could, that they would need to be paid. Also to work with the tenants to see how much they would pay. And then the city should have done rental subsidies, have the tenants pay, their city back in 10 or 15 years. This is a legislation that wasn't thought out, and I'm so fearful that the renters are going to be in a horrible situation once they go to small claims court. And there are also the tents. I think them giving out tents, him and the Democratic Socialists giving out tents without a management plan was reckless. And I'm the person who legislated safe sites for sleeping for people who lived in vehicles, because that was the highest bump in our homeless population. I legislated that. We opened them up with a management plan, but they just gave out tents without any management plan. And then all of a sudden there's tents in front of people's businesses and homes and it wasn't safe for people who were housed or unhoused. It was horrendous. And so what I would have done is I would have gotten the sites in the district, and then I would have said, come into the sites and we'll give you a tent and services. It was absolutely ass backwards. And so I am very disappointed in the way that he has demonstrated his ignorance, I guess, or just trying to make headlines instead of making headway.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? If there aren't any, I'll ask one. How do you see development in D5 playing out, especially as the city's emptying out now and developers have plans on the tables and consolidation of wealth is going to people they're looking for safe deposit boxes for their billionaires' treasure troves.
Hey, I've always said we should have a wealth tax. I mean, for us to target certain groups, like let's go after the tech people. This city has so many wealthy people that are, inheriting wealth, to have trust funds and everything else. We should be actually doing a wealth tax. That's what we should be doing, and working with the state for wealth tax, because there's such an equity gap in this city. But I also think with development that, we need housing. And this COVID has shown this Broadway spotlight on the inequities. We need affordable housing, but we need all kinds of housing. And I just feel that right now, like I did a housing opportunity blueprint when I was a supervisor, and there's a lot of city land that we could actually be building housing. I actually found the housing at McDonald's on 730 Stanton, and knew McDonald's wanted to sell and asked the city to move on that. And we were able to buy that property. That's 100% affordable housing. And when I worked with the mayor and other supervisors, we raised that housing fund to $600 million. So that was one of the first priorities. So homeless families and families that make $15 an hour are going to be going into that affordable housing at McDonald's. But we should not back down right now in housing. I was a legislative aide in 2008 when we had the horrible economic crisis. And, everything stopped. And that was wrong, because what happened is when things started going again, we got into this situation where we didn't have enough affordable housing for folks. And we have to be creative. The city doesn't have enough money to build what, like Dean Preston says, 10,000 units. And there is no way we're going to be able to build 10,000 units when, people have promised 5,000 units and they haven't been able to build 1,000 units when we were an actual economic engine. So we have to look at how we can do that. Private-public partnerships, building on city land is a good way to do that. But we need to make sure that we have people also signed up for affordable housing using neighborhood preference, which is a legislation that I worked on when I was in Mayor Breed's office, to make sure people can get the affordable housing in their neighborhood to stop displacement. These are things that we need to do. And I just feel that people that feel like, oh, we don't need any more housing, it only has to be 100% affordable housing. What's going to happen is we're going to have zero housing, because we saw that in 2008. We're going to have an exact same thing happen scenario. So I totally believe in we need to build housing.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for stopping by, and we appreciate
you.
And we'll be looking at your questionnaire, and we have others who are waiting. So thank you very much.
Everyone be safe.